Alright, let's get straight to it. 2015 Scion Tc. This is the 2.5 liter engine. Today we are doing rear brake pads. This is what your brake pads should look like. You should have a wear sensor on one. You're most likely going to need something to pry a lot of the brake pads and clips with. So we have a flathead screwdriver here. You're going to need a 14 millimeter, either a wrench or a socket and a ratchet to get off the bolts on the back of the caliper. And you don't need the ratchet wrench, but this is for me for when after I break the bolt loose, then I can just easily get it off. You're also going to need either a wire brush or a wire wheel to clean up some of these grooves on the caliper brackets. And last but not least, this is the special tool to compress our piston for our rear brakes. You can find a tool like this off from maybe Amazon or even in Harbor Freights. So I have my vehicle in the air and you can see the back tires will spin, but I'm using the impact to get these off, so it won't be no problem. And these are a 21 millimeter. If you're not using the impact, I recommend you keeping some weight on the back tires and then loosening them up with your 4-way or your breaker bar, then raise it off the ground and finish getting the lugs off. Now that the wheel is off, I can see my caliper that I need to get off, and I can also see this rotor is in really bad shape. So I would recommend for them to change this rotor as well. And you can tell that the brake pads aren't really hitting against the rotor, you know, flush and all the way, because there's so many still dark spots around here, and they drove this here. So this caliper should be nice and shiny right here. So there's definitely something going on in here that's not making this brake pad hit against this whole caliper. Most likely it just needs to be cleaned up really good in there. So the first step is to get this caliper off, and there's a 14 millimeter bolt right here and one right here. So let's go ahead and remove those. Once we have our bolts out, now we can just pry this off. If it's a little stuck, you can use your flathead screwdriver to kind of help you guide this off, and then set that out of the way. And now we have to get these old brake pads out here. You can see it was wearing out unevenly also. This one has almost twice the amount of brake pad left than this one. Now we can go ahead and pry these old hardware out. Now these pads didn't come with new hardware. A lot of times they don't. So these don't look like they're in bad shape. So I'm going to remove them softly so that I can clean them up and reuse them. Of course, if you don't want to do, if you have your new hardware and you don't want to do as thorough cleaning on this, or you don't have to remove this if you're just changing the brake pads. For me, it's worth it to take this off to clean it anyways. And also, I'm doing the rotor change on this, so that's why I have the rotors off right now. But for just changing the brake pads, you don't have to remove the caliper bracket unless you really need to get in between these grooves to do some deep cleaning. All right, so we're getting ready to put our piston back in, or compress our piston. So just come over here where the brake reservoir is and remove this cover and just leave it loosely, just like that. That way it can breathe. We're getting ready to push our pistons back in. So I'm using this kit right here. I'm gonna go with, they have a left hand and a right hand tool. I'm gonna go with the left hand one, and you have to use this collar. And what I like to do when I always do these brakes, you can look right here and you can see the pattern that you have. And what I like to do is, I see that there's 4 on each side. So I like to start with this one here. This is the E. A lot of times it fits, and it's the only one that has 4 on the outside, if you can see there. So, and so far it does fit, so I decided to go with this one. It's actually pretty simple. Once you have your 3 pieces, you want to slide this piece over like this to where it's sitting that way. This piece here kind of screws up and down, so you want it to start all the way down. Then these 2 holes in the back of this plate goes right over these 2 nodes here, and now you're ready to start to apply this. So we're gonna set this in here, and those 4 nipples on this part are gonna set right into those 4 grooves, and then I'm gonna back this plate back until it can't go anymore. So this is my setup here. You can see I have the backing plate is against these forks, and I have it to where it's all the way back. Now I can start to go clockwise with it. You want to go clockwise, and you'll notice as you go there starts to be a little slack in space between here. So that's when you adjust this here to close that space, and then you go clockwise again, and you just keep repeating that until your piston is all the way in, just like that. And you should notice every time you do that, some space is appearing right here. That means it's going down. And if you're not having any space appearing there, then this also means you're not having enough driving force to go down. So you can use a wrench. There's a little part right here. You can use a wrench on here to help drive this piston down as you turn. Keep an eye on this boot. Sometimes it looks like it wants to give. You can always just back out a little bit until it fixes itself, and then you can continue again. And just like that, we're done with this kit. So we can put the kit away. Our piston is all the way back in. We'll put the kit away until we get to the other side. So now it's time to do a little cleaning. I have my wire wheel here. If you don't have a drill and a wire wheel, you can always just use a wire brush, a simple wire brush to clean up in here. But we're gonna get as much of this dirt from off of this piston as we can, and also in the back of these forks. We're gonna make sure there's no dirt and sludge in the back of these forks. And for the places it's hard to reach, you can just use the brush to get in there. So a lot of people underestimate cleaning this part right here. This is the caliper bracket. So the reason why I recommend cleaning this caliper bracket is, you see these grooves here? These grooves and this groove here, they pretty much, that's where your hardware sits, and when you have all this gunk behind it, it reduces your clearance for your brake pads to slide, and a lot of times your brake pads can get stuck that way. So we're gonna go ahead and clean these grooves with the wire wheel. But like I said, if you don't have a wire wheel, you can always use a wire brush. right, so that is much better. Now, as I said before, these hardware I'm gonna have to reuse because the brake pads that they bought didn't come with new hardware. But good for them that this is in good shape. It's not rusted, it's just dirty. So I'm gonna go ahead and use the wire brush and clean this up as well. Okay, so you can see the difference, and this is the one that I cleaned, and this is before they're clean. So this is the back side, this is before it's clean, and this is after it's clean. So I'm gonna go clean this one up now, and then we'll go start putting it on. So this is a good time to load your new hardware on if you do have the bracket off. And just like that, we're ready to go. Now we can go ahead and put our brake pads on. The one with the sensor you want on the inside. So we'll start with the one on the outside without the sensor. That one went on pretty easy. And let's go ahead and put the inside one on. So before we put our caliper back on, it's time to apply some brake grease. So how I apply my brake grease is I take a little bit and I only apply it where it's going to make contact with the brake pads. So right here on the piston, you can see right there, I like how it changed colors when you apply the grease. It's like a little purple. But so you can see that's all covered now. And I also like to apply it on the back of these forks. That's where it's going to make contact on this side here of the pads. That way you don't have grease just everywhere. It doesn't need to be collecting dust and stuff like that. So, and after that, we can go ahead and reapply the caliper. And I'm going to go ahead and fit my two 14mm bolts back in. Alright, so everything is tight. The caliper is tightened up. I got my new brake pads in. Everything is greased, everything is cleaned and wire wheeled. So now the only thing to do is to push the tire back on, and that will put everything back together and keep everything tight. Alright, so I got the tire back on, and now we just have to do the other side. Alright, well that's it. Got both sides done. The other side was the same exact as the side that I showed on camera. Now that we got that done, go ahead and put your cover back on your brake reservoir. We can close our hood, and that's pretty much it. The rear brake pads are done.